Long Point Basin Land Trust now has 5 nature reserves spread across our region. These reserves help to protect woodlands, wetlands, streams, old-growth forests, savanna, and shorelines. They're also home to a number of species at risk, including eastern flowering dogwood, Acadian flycatcher, and many of our most endangered turtles and snakes. Some of these reserves are home to species that need large areas of natural habitat, such as the scarlet tanager and other woodland interior loving species. Expansive natural areas have, unfortunately, become scarce in southern Ontario, so the work of our Land Trust and of our conservation partners is vitally important. A goal with all of our reserves is to enhance their role as important habitats as part of a larger natural landscape. On some reserves, we're actively restoring natural habitats, while on others, we're simply letting nature and natural processes continue to thrive. What follows are short profiles of our 5 reserves, which we've been able to secure for conservation thanks to the wonderful support of our many donors and funders. You can learn more about these reserves and how to help in efforts to steward and expand our nature reserve system by visiting our website at longpointlandtrust.ca.
This is the Jackson Gun Old Growth Forest. This is the first reserve that the Land Trust acquired. It is a prime example of what the climax forest would have looked like in the southern Great Lakes region. It's basically remained unchanged for hundreds of years. This is what most of southern Ontario would have looked like pre-European settlement. The trees here are sugar maple and beech, and they're over 280 years old. This rare habitat provides homes to not only rare reptiles, but also many rare birds and all sorts of wildlife that you wouldn't find in a younger forest. One thing you'll notice about the structure of this forest that's different is because it's an old growth forest, the trees are extremely tall, the canopy is very high. So when a young tree starts growing, it needs to grow up towards the light, and they grow very few branches horizontally. So you'll see the trees are going high up to the sky. There's very few branches going out, and there's a little bit of an understory. And this is different from other younger forests where there's trees of all different heights, and it's not quite as open as this old growth forest. It provides a lot of habitat to cavity nesting species, so birds, mammals, reptiles, things that like big old rotting trees and stumps. So this is a massive beech tree stump, and you can see the tree lying here. This tree would have been close to 300 years old. And this sort of habitat is ideal for some of our larger snakes to both spend the winter safely and to lay their eggs in the rotting material that you see here. This sort of microhabitat is absent from the vast majority of woodlands across southern Ontario. Trees are rarely ever reach this size. They're always harvested beforehand. And so seeing a large tree like this and a large stump is quite rare.
So we're standing in the middle of the Arthur Langford Nature Reserve, the largest reserve owned by Long Point Basin Land Trust. At 180 acres, it is an extensive forest and slough or swamp forest habitat. It's really significant for its size. The forest itself is younger. You can look around and you see a lot of the younger trees and sort of medium-aged trees. It's a bit different from the Jackson Gun Old Growth Forest that the Land Trust also owns. But since the Land Trust's vision is to protect nature in perpetuity, when we take on and acquire a nature reserve, we know we're thinking centuries into the future. So this younger forest in time is going to become an mature and ultimately an older growth forest. Although this property is relatively flat, there are some gentle rises here and there, and the vegetation, and in fact all of the flora and fauna, changes as you go from the flooded forest up to these small sandy rises, and you get things like yellow birch and eastern hemlock. And one of the things that was most significant about this property is that it is both a forest and a swamp, and so a slough forest with normally
I would be actually kneeling in a lot of water, but this has been one of the driest years in decades. And so where I'm sitting right now is in the heart of a buttonbush thicket swamp, which is actually a really rare plant community. The plants are just its fall, so the leaves are falling naturally, and the soil itself is still quite moist. But typically the water level would actually be coming up to about this height. So in spring into summer, we would be deafened by a chorus of frogs, and if we started looking under logs, we'd see lots of salamanders, from redback to Jefferson salamanders. And in fact, there's certain types of wildlife species, things like Acadian flycatcher or scarlet tanager, that are only found in large forest or swamp forest blocks. And so for the Land Trust, having a large property like this that gives a home to native species that like large areas is really important. So we're just standing along the edge of one of Long Point Basin Land Trust's newer nature reserves near Turkey Point. The Turkey Point Watershed Reserve is being named to honor George and Shirley Pond, who are great friends of nature in Norfolk County. This property is really exciting for the Land Trust because it's not just about how important it is for nature today, but it's about how it's going to help restore nature into the future. The property is 80 acres, so it's a large property in southern Norfolk County, very close to the lake shore, and it is part of a cold water stream system. This stream system is very much intact and forested through most of its length, with the exception of this property. And so the goal of the Land Trust is to help restore the forest cover along the stream corridor and to connect forest that is to the east with the forest to the west. So by purchasing and protecting this property forever, the Land Trust is going to protect the watershed and a cold water stream, which in turn is going to improve the water quality and water quantity into the Turkey Point Marsh and Long Point Bay. The property is a really scenic and quite spectacular rolling countryside overlooking the marshes of Turkey Point. And there's two branches totaling just a little over 1 kilometer in length along the Forestville stream. Part of it is in wetland, there's ponds, there's a little bit of woodland as well, but a lot of the property, about half of it, is currently still in agriculture. And over time, once we develop a management plan, we will help begin to start restoring the property. And we expect that there's going to be a forested stream corridor, that there's going to be restoration to savanna and perhaps some grasslands as well. So what today may be a cornfield, in the years to come will be restored for savanna and woodland and perhaps additional wetland habitat. I'm standing in the valley of the Forestville Creek, just along the edges of the Land Trust's Turkey Point Watershed Reserve property. These sorts of stream valleys, it's a cold water system that's quite rare in the Carolinian region of southern Ontario, but a cold water system covered with large trees is a really important habitat. There's all sorts of wildlife, some of them species at risk like Louisiana water thrush or Acadian flycatcher, that love these stream corridors, as well as things like brook trout, which occur in cold water systems. A lot of the wildlife that's found in this area really thrives in areas with a stream system and shade over the creek. This protecting and restoring cold water systems like this and the forest cover around them is central to the vision of the Land Trust for this property. I'm standing here at Long Point Basin Land Trust's newest nature reserve, located just west of the hamlet of Fisher's Glen. We are incredibly excited about this new reserve. It's a spectacular opportunity for conservation. We've got 52 acres of property, woodlands, savanna, ravines, bordering on a cold water stream. And really exciting is the fact that this property protects 1,400 feet of shoreline of Lake Erie. We're excited about the natural features, the wildlife. There's some species at risk here. And this property along the shoreline connects with a cold water stream, and it serves as an anchor for a series of protected natural areas many, many miles inland. Shoreline properties, beyond the interest from people, are tremendously important ecologically. We have a land or terrestrial habitat meeting the shore and the aquatic habitats. There's all sorts of wildlife that really loves the shoreline and coastal habitats. On this particular property, we have not just 1,400 feet of beaches along the Lake Erie shore, and that's really quite extraordinary enough, but we also have a really high bluff, 125 feet or higher, and there's all sorts of wildlife and plant communities that do particularly well. Things that are here throughout the year, as well as some of the migrating wildlife. Songbirds, for example, that are returning north in the spring will cross a lake such as Lake Erie behind me here, and their first landfall could be a woodlot just like this. So protecting a natural habitat at the shoreline is vital and a tremendous conservation opportunity for an organization like Long Point Basin Land Trust. The Delhi Nature Reserve is a really interesting and really quite special nature reserve for Long Point Basin Land Trust. The property was a gift of Cecilia and Joe Kiss from the Wotas estate. And the property itself is a small but highly significant natural area. It's a provincially significant wetland, and flowing into the wetland is a small stream, and surrounding that is the hills with large hardwood and evergreen trees. So we've got hemlock and conifer forest with maples and beech flowing through this property. It's just on the outskirts of Delhi, so small but highly significant natural area, just along the edge of Big Creek Valley. Support from the public and volunteers is critical to furthering the mission for the Land Trust. And we encourage you to visit our website to learn how you can help. You can report your reptile sightings, you can make a donation, you can find out how you could make a gift of land. We encourage the public to get engaged to help with this important work.